This is Office Talk with Annette Stepanian. Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Office Talk. In this week's episode, I'm talking to Eliana of ellyB Events about how we can create multiple streams of revenue in our business, and I'm super excited about this conversation. But before we dive in, just want to let you know that if you haven't already heard, we are celebrating our 1-year birthday of the podcast in September, which is so exciting that we have been creating what I think are some great interviews and some great content week over week for a year. And what we're going to do is we have some surprises lined up for you guys in September. But for the following few weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to turn over the mic to you guys, and you're going to get to play host. And you're going to have an opportunity to pick your favorite episodes from the vault. So what we've done is we've gone through, we've looked at what our favorite episodes have been. And each week for the next few weeks, you're going to have a chance to vote for your favorite episode, and we will re-air that the following week. So if you want to have a chance to vote and pick your favorites, then make sure you're following me along on Instagram if you're not already. You can find me over at Annette Stepanian, and hopefully by now you have learned how to spell my last name. So make sure to follow me along on Instagram. Stay tuned for all the different birthday festivities that are happening. And just want to say thank you again for listening and being here and being such a great support. I wish I could reach on through this microphone and give you a big virtual hug. So let's try and do that. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, yeah. There you go. That was a big squeeze for me to you. So thank you so much. And with that said, let's turn around and let's talk to Eliana. Now, I wanted to bring Eliana on the show because she is one of those folks who always has like 1,000,001 ideas about her business. But the difference between her and maybe most of us is that she actually executes on them. What I love about her business is she has really thought about how she can create multiple streams of revenue in her business. So she's figured out what her main service was and has come up with complementary services and products so that she can continue to build her brand, but also bring in different streams of revenue in her business. So I thought she would be a great person to have on the show so we can all start thinking about maybe how can we do this in our business. So with that said, let's head on over to the show with Eliana. Hey, Eliana, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Annette. I'm honored.
Oh, you're so sweet. I'm honored because you are one busy woman. And before we dive into how you manage all of that, why don't you bring our listeners up to speed about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. My name is Eliana Baucicault from ellyB Events, and our main business is weddings and events, and we do weddings and events all over. We're based in Atlanta, but we do maybe about 50% of our events all over the country, so it's fun in that aspect. On top of that, we have our event space that's called the loft, which is a venue where we have other event planners or just other regular people that just want to come together and have any types of events. We don't do too many weddings there, a lot more social events. So it's fun to kind of see that side. And as a venue manager, because it's completely different than an event planner. It's two different worlds, but as much as it's the same event. And then from there, we just launched Be Inspired, which is our coffee table book. And gosh, I feel like I have so many entities that I need to talk about. We do, the Be Academy, which is group coaching for wedding planners. So those are our main projects right now.
Yeah, and the list goes on and on and on. And I remember when we first talked, it's probably been like quite a while now. I remember we got on the phone and you were like, and then I want to do this, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm like, girl. And it's so funny because normally I'd be like, okay, shiny object syndrome. But like right. You actually follow through and you execute on things. You finish things, which is, if you can handle that, then you can have all the shiny objects you want.
Yeah, I was talking to my team today and I was just like, we were kind of depending on others to help with some projects. And I was like, I can't operate like this. I have a plan, I do it, I execute, I move on, so it's kind of hard to have things lingering for me because I like to laugh and say I have ADD. If it doesn't happen immediately, I just move on to something else.
Yes. But I want to talk about how you have gone about creating multiple revenue streams in your business. So kind of like your main bread and butter is the event planning. That's really where everything originated from. And then now you've kind of created these different branches that all fit into this theme of events and event planning and whatnot, but then you've created different revenue streams. So can you talk a little bit about that and kind of just how that all developed?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mother brand, as I like to call it, which is the event planning, ellyB events. From there, I would say probably our first subsets of additional revenue stream came from the design aspect of things. We were getting a lot of clients that were, they had a vision or they had some ideas from Pinterest and wanted to make them unique and wanted to make one of a kind, but had no idea nor the time to actually execute that. So from there, we really kind of structured our business. As much as we love everything from event planning, logistics and all, I would say the event design is our wheelhouse. So from there, since we were doing so many concepts of a room, we wanted to just really have a finger on it. So we went into adding linens to our business. So that's an additional invoice, an additional revenue stream. It's not bulk packaged anywhere when a client is hiring us. Same thing when it comes down to lighting. Same thing when it comes down to any kind of rentals, such as chairs and chargers and stuff like that. So it really evolved from just wanting to own the entire event design and be able to kind of move things around that we needed to for our clients, budget-wise, presentation-wise, and things like that. From there, we kind of moved into getting the event space, which is the B loft, because we needed an office space. We were a team. We were busting by the seams. We kind of wanted to be together and kind of grow that way. And I said, hey, if I'm going to go ahead and get an office space, I wanted it to be prime real estate in Atlanta, where people were comfortable and was neutral for everyone, because Atlanta is so huge. I live an hour away from my office. So just wanted a central location. And I said, hey, based on the rent, that just to have those type of spaces, I would need to actually get revenue from it. It couldn't just be an office space or / showroom. So I said I wanted to do an intimate event space, which we really didn't have in Atlanta at the time, where people can come and have their events and they can visualize and they can design to literally keep the space as a kind of an open white box that people can walk in and just create their dreams however they wanted to. So as much as I hear the demands from different clients of different things that they're looking for, I always see if it can complement every other aspects of my business, but not hurt other aspects of my business. And that's how I decided to grow and say, okay, this is a revenue stream for us. Even at some point, we did the actual flowers for weddings, which I don't talk about a lot, and we didn't fail at it at all, but we weren't producing the level of what I would want for our clients. In my mind, I created it and started thinking, okay, I can save them money. I have an idea of their overall event. Why wouldn't I do flowers? It's obviously the next progression, but I just know I didn't have the team in place to do the ordering and the behind the scenes and then the day of executing. And I always walked into someone's event scared that they didn't love their flowers, or, scared that the flowers didn't last the day of and stayed up 24 hours before. So I quickly just came to realize that it's not where I wanted my business to go. Gratefully, we didn't have any problems and I didn't fail, but I knew I just wanted to leave it to the experts. So I wanted to help them design and conceptualize and have, people that are experts execute that.
So it's kind of ironic because I hear you talking about how you wanted to kind of control the entire design process, right? So it almost sounds like you're a control freak. But then in order to be able to grow and to be able to do all these things, you really need to let go and delegate and bring on the right people.
Absolutely. So I think once you're trying to figure out what works best for you and what's profitable too, because we have to worry about profit. There's no sense of doing it if you're not making money. You realize if you don't have the tools in place, team in place, that it's not yielding the money that you think about, then let it go. Let it go doesn't mean that I'm completely saying, here, you event designer / florist, go ahead and create the concept for my clients. I can still be that control freak and say, look, I've created this concept. Here, take it and bring it to life, and you can add on whatever add-ons you'd like to do for that.
You're so funny. You crack me up. I could just see you there the night before the event, putting the flowers together and trying to, yeah. So for people who are maybe not in the event planning industry, so we have a lot of folks who listen who are maybe a service-based business or maybe even a product-based business. How can they start thinking about adding multiple revenue streams, but in a very intelligent way where, like you said, it's not hurting your other businesses? What are some things they need to be thinking about and planning for if that is in their future?
Definitely. One, just hearing again what your clients are constantly asking for. So if you're a graphic designer and you do logos and stuff like that and letterhead and things like that, and now Say you did it for an event planner and she comes to you as like the graphic designer and say, hey, can you do invitations as well? That might not be your thing. Working with text in that atmosphere might not be your thing, but you can collaborate with someone that can do invitations really, really well that complements your brand. So, even though they can outsource it through you as the graphic designer, you have a subset of your company or another professional that's actually helping you produce the product. So collaborations, after you hear your client and what they're looking for, if you don't have the team suitable, who can you collaborate through? And, the best way that I can think about it is private label. Think of Nike and Kate Hudson brand. They're all getting it from the same warehouse, but they all have different labels. So kind of just thinking about other resources and collaborations that you can do with other people, but still yield the same result to make profit.
That sounds really easy when you say it.
I try to break it down to easy because it really is easy. I think, as business owners and entrepreneurs, we complicate things and feel like, you watch everyone on social media and the smoke and mirrors and they're like, oh, I'm grinding and I never sleep. And, this is all I do. But is that making you money? So it's like, figure out, this is what I'm great at. I know I can give great direction. I know my brand inside and out, because if you don't know your brand inside and out, you can't convey that to someone else, not a customer, nor, a possible collaboration. So once you know these things about yourself and know that you can sell it to anyone, then you know what you need to go ahead and put into place in order to make your business grow.
Period. End of story. Full stop. Podcast episode is over now. Okay. So it still takes a lot of management. I mean, I'm not trying to complicate things, even though I have a tendency to complicate things, but it takes a lot of management. You can't be in a million places at once. I mean, you've published a coffee table book. You've published, you have this online course. You have an event space. So, and what's interesting about you is you have businesses across a variety of mediums. So it's not, it's in person, it's online, it's a product, it's a service. So how do you go about managing that in a way without losing your mind and, without putting in those late nights and going crazy and having an actual life?
Absolutely. Honestly, it's having a good team. I won't say having a big team because I don't. From the event planning side, it literally looks like I have 10 to 15 people and it's just two of us plus our day of help, So I try to spend a lot of time cultivating the team that I have instead of kind of always having that open door policy where you don't work and you just get rid of them. So you need to start explaining yourself over and over again. So I think that takes a lot of time. And then even from the virtual side, which I have a pretty decent sized virtual team, I like to hire people sometimes based on projects. So I will have someone that just answers my inquiries for the event planning business, someone that's just handling the tours and podcast interviews and stuff like that for the book. And then I have my business manager that's over all of that, making sure all the projects are working simultaneously and letting me know where they feel like I should be focusing on or what we need to hire on. Like this week, we may just focus only on the course just so that we can plan out for the entire month. So I think that scheduling and just having someone behind, because I'm not very much as I'm a planner, I'm not like, okay, this is what needs to be done and I only have an hour for emails. I definitely need some level of management, and being able to even admit that to yourself definitely helps you get in a better role. So I'm literally saying to my manager, you tell me what to do and I do it. I think also as entrepreneurs, understanding that you have some creatives and then you have business-minded entrepreneurs, and sometimes it doesn't cross over to be one and the same, So I see a lot of creatives that does amazing work, does amazing products and everything, but their business aspect, they rather be on Facebook all day and talk to people and socialize than answer inquiries, So if that's not your thing, parse yourself accordingly so you can hire a virtual assistant or someone else to manage that aspect of your business.
Yeah, so much of it is about knowing yourself and then having the foresight to recognize, well, okay, I'm not good at this. And then how can I supplement that thing that I don't want to call it a weakness. It's just not a strength, and being able to find that talent. And that's hard. So how have you gone about finding good talent and people that you could really trust to essentially manage your business for you on the day-to-day stuff?
Yeah, I kissed a lot of toads, I guess. From the virtual side, it's not easy. A lot of people I find either through going through different conferences or different Facebook groups. Of course, the Savvy, I think that's how we met, and you kind of hear all the raves and you hear all the people. That's great. I think after hiring a lot of people that weren't a great fit. It wasn't that they weren't great at what they did. They weren't a great fit with just my brand and where I wanted to take it. One, being able to understand that, to understand that you're really great at creating projects, but my projects are a little bit different, and being able to explain yourself. So I think before I even hire someone, I've learned to just say, okay, what do I need them to do? Forget what their services are listed on their website. What exactly are my day-to-day tasks, or what would make me excited to pay this person when their invoice comes in? That's really the truth.
Interesting. What makes me excited to pay?
Yeah. I mean, there's sometimes I receive an invoice and it's not that you don't have the money to pay someone, but you're like, why am I paying you? And it just takes you a little bit longer, So I like when that invoice comes in, I'm like, yes, you've done your job. I'm excited. Let me pay you really quickly, but what is that list of tasks that I need to have completed to feel happy to make those payments? So before I create that list, I can now have a conversation, or Amanda, who's my business manager, can have that conversation with the personnel and say, look, this is what we're looking for. Does this really fit? Because whatever I need is not going to fit in a list of services, because we're all unique as creative individuals. So here's my list. Here's what I'm looking for. Do you feel like you can execute it? How many hours do you think that you can execute it? Because we don't have time to micromanage. So ever since I started doing that versus just going off of all the hype that I can see on social media and their list of services of what they felt like I needed, I've had a huge difference in results.
Interesting. Now, what I find interesting is you almost are like the orchestrator, right? You are the producer of your business. You are bringing in all these people to take on certain tasks and play different roles and whatnot. So how do you go about planning, or maybe you don't, like where your business is headed? Because it sounds like a lot of it is like, I have an idea. It's a little bit impulsive. Like, we got to do it. We got to execute. We got to sprint to get it done. And how much of it is really, okay, I am here and this is where I want my business to be at the end of the year, in 2 years, 5 years?
Most of it's impulsive, to be honest with you. I love business in general. So regardless of what type of business, I just love to see an idea manifest. I think this year in 2017, I'm taking a little bit more of the different approach of, like you said, of saying, okay, if I want to start a podcast, what results am I looking for it to yield? Is it now is the right time? And that has come with help from my financial advisor, Mary Beth, to just say, okay, slow down. Let's figure it out. Let's make sure that we're setting up life, beyond just, we make all this great money. That's great. But what does my life look like 10 years from now, when I don't want to have that energy to do a project every single day when I wake up? So I'm now learning to go ahead and make sure that I'm planning accordingly, making sure money is where it needs to be, and putting them in different buckets. Because as you get older, you realize that it just can't all sit in one bucket. It has to have a plan. Your money has to have a plan. And
you need to have a bucket to begin with.
Right. It's like you have to have a bucket, and you have to figure out, okay, I have the bucket now. Like, how do I continuously fill the bucket? And so it's just kind of just going through all these different motions and knowing ultimately I want my brand to be a household name, regardless if it's through a product or through a service. I want that legacy. I want that Vera Wang, Martha Stewart legacy, but my way, So I know that that's the end goal, and I have to understand as I grow to not continuously do things because it's cool. It's not the cool, trendy thing to do. Just like my clients' designs are not trendy. I don't really follow trends. I want to be timeless and just kind of approach things that way.
Very cool. Very cool. So you actually work with a lot of planners specifically, but they're entrepreneurs, right? At the end of the day, via your B Academy. So what are some things that you see people are tripping themselves, like they're just constantly tripping over when they're trying to grow their business?
I will say social media is a downfall for a lot of people right now, in the sense that you feel and see because people only put out what they want you to see. So from different entrepreneur levelship, they can put out that everything's amazing and nothing's wrong, and this is what you should do. If I'm buying client gifts, you should buy client gifts. As a starter, someone that's still trying to fill their bucket, they don't know which direction to go to because there's so much noise coming from social media, so it's how to kind of fine tune out and say, forget about the noise for a second. As much as social media can be great for your business, let's not lose focus as to why we started the business. So did we start the business because we want to be Insta famous, Or did we start the business because we have a for what we do? Did we start the business just for money? Once you figure out those things, what your true core is, you have to kind of just build your back end that it's so strong that when you are on the scene or you are talking to other people, they know you're an expert and not just kind of being tripped up because you're following all these different trends that you see on social media. That's the number one thing. Everyone is like, oh, I should spend on branding, or I should be spending on gifts, or I should be spending on going to these 25 different conferences because that's how I'm going to go ahead and get business, when it could be furthest thing from the truth.
We had an interview with Anne Samoilov who talks about launching, and she basically was saying a lot of the same things of like knowing your customer and knowing what works for you, and you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. But, it's so tempting because a lot of us, especially in the online space, we're figuring it out as we go along. Like there is, it's such a new world. So it's so tempting to kind of like want to look at your neighbor and see like what they're writing, like copy their paper because you think, oh, she's doing it this way, so it must be working. So we're learning by doing. But I love what you said about like really making sure you have a really strong backbone, essentially, of like what your core is, and then going from there. Because otherwise, you just feel like you're just running around in circles, and you're not seeing that kind of progress that you would like to, whether you define that through money or Instagram followers or however you define that. So
right. And I tell people all the time, it's okay to be aware. It's definitely okay, and you should be aware of what your neighbor is doing, and just so that you're not caught off guard. Just don't focus on it and just kind of put your blinders on until you're able to get into your stride. Like I think we all are waiting to get to that stride because that's where the continuous money in the bucket comes from. So the more that you're on that stride, you can kind of look at things and like, oh yeah, that probably is working. This is how I could do it. Or you can look at it like, nope, it's really not working. You're just telling everyone that, but until you can figure out yourself, you're not able to make those educated guesses.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, I want you guys to rewind that and listen to that again. So it's a lot in that. So let's talk about your book.
Yeah.
Your book, tell us a little bit more about your book.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Well, thanks for all your help on the book. You've kind of helped on a couple of my projects. So you're a great example of collaborations for sure.
Oh,
so be inspired. I came up with the idea after seeing a body of my work being put together for an album. And that body of work was highly focused on event design. And as much as I loved it, I knew there was more. I was like, there's more to this. I didn't want to just put out a book based on things that I've done that you can either see on my website or Instagram. There had to be more. And around that time, a lot of publications and blogs were excited because felt that they should deserve recognition for finally putting a woman of color either in ads or on the cover of a magazine. And this was in 2016, and I thought I was in a twilight zone. I said, there's no way that you guys are excited that you've done this in 2016. And I praised them. I'm thankful that it happened, no matter how long it takes. You're still always thankful. But I was like, I wanted a woman of color because I know for a bride, her first thing that she does is she runs to a bookstore. No matter how extinct bookstores practically are, you run and you get that binder because you're just so happy to finally be a bride. And I wanted when she went to that section that she saw herself, that she, sees herself in a beautiful gown, in a beautiful setting, and just nothing but who she is. And it doesn't even have to be glamour or anything like that, because some of our shoots are, Southern style, a little bit more organic, but just comfortable and excited to see what her event day can end up as. So that's when I decided to go ahead and do a few editorial shoots just in different cities, from going from New Orleans to New York and being here in Atlanta and going to North Carolina, and just putting different settings that a woman of color can see herself in, and different gown choices and stuff like that to complement. The other half of the book are real weddings that we've actually done. So it's kind of an ode to the woman of color, but also ode to design, because our clients are spending so much money on their design and spending so much time invested in their wedding day. It can consume them while they're working, So I wanted to show that I appreciate all the work that they've put into their wedding, as well as hiring me, and inspire the entire industry, regardless of color, shape, or size, to show like what a fully designed editorial shoot could look like, but see how far off the weddings are not that far off, So I try to make my weddings look like an editorial shoot with real clients with beautiful faces.
They really are beautiful. I mean, your event design, I'm not just saying that. It's like really high end. You're like, wow, like all the lighting and the flowers and everything are really beautiful. And you talked earlier about, wanting to leave a legacy. That was very important too. And I think this book is one manifestation of that. What you talk about, you want others to see themselves when they go to the bookstore and look through that book. And it's so great that you've put it together and it's out in the world, because I know it's not easy to publish a book, but
yeah, it's definitely not. And I will say, I always felt like when I got all the books or got the first copy in my hand, like that was the moment that I would tear up, and it never came when I got the book. I almost teared up when I hear all these testimonials for these little girls. I mean, I've heard from little girls that's anywhere from like 3 to 8. And they're like, Mommy, look at me. Or like, I want to see that book. Give it to me,
Aww.
And I don't think if it just had flowers on the cover, although vibrant, they probably wouldn't really care to look at it. But here they see a beautiful model on the front and they're like, Mom, what else is in there? I want to see that. And the bride looks like me. So when I heard that, and I had another one of my industry colleagues say that the book actually is a piece of history. It's not just a coffee table book. And I was like, they get it. Yes. Like that was, if I never sold another book, I'd be happy, because that's all I needed to hear.
That's really sweet. That is true. And it's true. It's true. And I think it's amazing that you went through this whole process, because it's not easy putting that book together. So can you talk a little bit about just the whole process of actually, if someone wants to create some sort of book or create something where they feel like they're putting their artwork or their art into the world, what was any kind of tips you might have for those folks?
Yeah, I have tons of tips. One, I think everyone should put a book. I do. I think, we work so hard that it should be documented. It should be a piece of history, even if it's just a book for yourself, just to have it there so you can refer to and for your family to refer to. So I definitely think everyone in some capacity needs to do a book. I didn't find self-publishing that bad. And I know every time someone asks me that question, I'm like, it didn't feel that horrible to me. I think more so because I knew good people. So just kind of taking you through the journey. So I didn't go to try it. Even though I created a book proposal, I never submitted it to any of the publishing houses, because even though I felt in my heart that I knew that they would take it, I just knew what that cover would look like. I knew what that content would look like, and I didn't want to mess with that piece of art. So it made sense for me to make that huge investment to produce the book, just to do it the way that I visualize it in my head. That's the first thing. So if you don't want your art tampered with, then self-publishing is the way to go. If you're just looking to just do a book and kind of have someone else have the say, maybe it's the, what did you say? I'm a control freak. Maybe it's a control freak in me. But, if you just kind of want a collaboration to create a book, then definitely you can go ahead and get published. So from there, once I came with the idea, I kind of knew that I had my photographer friends, because they were all either I was using their work and we've worked together for many years. So that normally would be the hard part. But obviously, since I'm a wedding planner, that wasn't the hardest part. So I kind of was very lucky as far as the content came about. Then just kind of researching and seeing, all right, now I have this idea, what happens next, So it was, finding a printer, which is the biggest bulk of your cost, and seeing, does it make sense to print here? Does it make sense to print overseas? Where does your heart lie with that? Some people just don't believe in overseas printing, so that can triple what you're expecting to pay in printing cost. So when you figure out a printer, it's now needing to figure out how to talk their language. They're talking colors and binding and different paper sizes and thickness and weight, and just kind of doing your little Google research. Surprisingly, there are tons of self-publishing blog posts and comparison charts that you put a simple post in, you get tons of information. So I literally kind of just took Trello, which we use in-house, and kind of just created a card for everything. So I had a card for binding, I had a card for paper weight, and I also looked at previous books that I admired in the wedding industry or just photo industry period, and just kind of see, were they using glossy paper, were they using matte, how did their dust jacket look, and kind of just did little comparisons there. Some of them I didn't buy the book. I would just go on Amazon and say, okay, how many pages, what was the size, just to use those things as reference points. From there, I actually reached out to my in-house graphic designer and said, hey, by the way, do you do books? And she said, absolutely. And I said, great, I'm going to mail you a book that I love. And if I could do this book, I'd be happy. And she said, no problem. We'll do it times 100. And she killed it. Irene from Magnolia did an amazing job.
Oh, I love Irene.
Yes,
she's going to be on the show too.
She's amazing. I laid it out, literally. She got me scared for a second because she did it in a week. And I was like, impossible. But I loved everything. Everything was
so
perfect.
Good.
reaching out to you and say, okay, I'm doing this book. What legal things do I need to think about? What legal contracts do I need to have in place? What conversation of course we can have these photographers be gung-ho and excited, but then it could be a New York Times bestseller. Are they going to come back after my assets? Getting a contract in place. From there, I believe when you spoke to Amanda, you referred to different copywriters who I think we hired her for one project when we were working with the B Academy and said, hey, you feel like helping us with the book next? And she already knew my voice. So it was perfection.
Oh, gosh.
That was just my dream team. And then we worked with someone else that kind of helped us with a little bit of marketing ideas, which I can have these master ideas and I do a brain dump and I'm like, here's my brain dump. Make it work for me, or what am I missing, or look at it from a different set of eyes. So, which I think any entrepreneur can definitely benefit from when they're working on different projects.
I love how you make it like so easy breezy with Eliana. I have a question. What did you want to be when you were younger?
What I wanted to be, definitely not a wedding planner. I didn't, when I went into college, I did not know what I wanted to be. I knew it would be business related. I always joke around and say in my mind, I was going to open a chain of laundromats and liquor stores because I'm from Brooklyn, New York. You need those out there.
And I want to own parking garages in the future at some point because it seems like it's a pretty decent business, especially in a major city.
Absolutely. We're not getting jets and cars anytime soon. So that's a good idea. So I just knew I wanted to run a business, and my professors would come to me like, you need to be a lawyer because you argue so well. Yeah, they're like, you argue so well. And I'm like,
that's so funny.
And when I left college, it was kind of right after 9/11, and I went into I was a temp paralegal and moved into project litigation. So as crazy as that sounds, project litigation is exactly my day-to-day life today. It really, really is. A wedding is a project, and I have partners and lawyers, aka my brides and grooms, that come to me and be like, look, this is what I got. What do I need to do in order to win this case? And that's the event day. So I kind of just approach everything in that manner.
I had no idea about that. I'm glad I asked that question. I didn't know you had like a little legal eagle in you.
I do. And the only reason why I didn't go further in legal is because at that time, since the economy was so down, I would manage over 60 contract attorneys. I would always walk into work and be like, these people are more educated than me. This makes no sense. And I knew I couldn't go into legal after that. And a lot of them were so miserable. They became teachers or artists. And I was just like, yeah, no, I don't need that extra bill.
Yeah, it's funny because when I talk to people, everybody has like I almost went to law school story. And then they're like, and then I met a lawyer and I realized it wasn't for me, or they were miserable. And I think there's definitely a place for people in the legal profession. There's so much you can do with it. But like any other profession, it makes sense to just really know what you're getting into with your eyes wide open. And sometimes what you see from the outside is not the reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So awesome, Eliana. Well, I am going to wrap up and ask you my final question, which is the one thing I know for sure is, and I ask you to fill in the blank.
The one thing I know for sure is that running a business is a lot of hard work, but it's worth it.
Thank you, Eliana. I'm so glad we finally got to talk. We've been trying to schedule this for quite a while now, but I just always love talking to you because you have such a passion, such energy and drive and commitment to see things through. And that's, I think, really inspiring to me. I'm sure it'll be inspiring to our listeners as well.
Thanks for having me, Annette.
So that's a wrap, my friend. If you want to learn more about Eliana and all of her different businesses, head on over to the show notes available at, and you guessed it, AnnetteStepanian.com/podcast/49. And remember to join the party on Instagram. You can find me at Annette Stepanian, and make sure to tune in every week where you're going to have an opportunity to vote for your fan favorite episode from the vault. So with that said, my friend, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a fantastic day. And I can't wait to talk to you later.